Hey everyone, it's Zach with Palantir Research. Breaking news this morning. This is actually really huge for Palantir regarding the £480 million deal for the NHS contracts. So Palantir has been awarded officially a transition contract for NHS England's trust specifically, and I'll talk about the implications since not all are positive depending on how you look at it. Now, this is for officially £24.9 million, and it's a 12-month deal, and this is starting on June 12th. And it was awarded to Palantir without an open tender process, but NHS England was quoted as saying it was a compliant tender process, meaning they're claiming they followed the rules. Now, there is a little bit of bias in the article if you do read through it, but officially this deal did go under the radar, honestly, beginning on June 12th, concerning I haven't seen any public news or easily findable news on this until today on June 20th. But I don't blame the NHS considering how much FUD is produced every time something comes out with Palantir getting closer to this contract. The Health Service Journal, or HSJ, who is breaking the news, said there are doctors and lawyers concerned about the transition contract, but in actuality, this isn't new news at all and something very difficult to verify. They do like to keep their sources anonymous here, and they're not very specific on how many people this is, and consider there are thousands of doctors and different employees across the NHS. Now, what is funny is that they're also saying in the article that there are NHS sources and anger from rivals who are saying Palantir is given an unfair advantage for the FDP contract. I just have to say this is BS, to be honest, considering this contract has been delayed and postponed, and this is to allow rivals, or said rivals, to try to win this. And Palantir has followed the rules, applied for the contract within the rules, and within the time limits. You could say theoretically they had an unfair advantage because they are working with the NHS when it came to COVID. Now, they got in for that separately here. Now, they did get their foot in the door there. They did provide value. They did start with a £1 contract, but they did expand to tens of millions of dollars. But that's not necessarily mean that they get an unfair advantage in the FDP, but they do get to showcase that they actually work and they have an actual product. So if you remember, there was also a UK consortium of several UK healthcare technologies that made a very public press release of trying to go for the FDP contract, and then they basically gave up a few months later. This was kind of embarrassing in my opinion. It basically showed that they don't have any working product, or they just have PowerPoints essentially, that they had a way to kind of get this FDP platform put together. But in the end, if you don't really have something working, especially for such a large contract that you want to implement immediately, Palantir has something that's working now today, and they have been making an impact on with their trials. So Palantir already has use cases. This is cutting wait times for cancer treatment and cutting overall wait list itself at the Chelsea and Westminster Hospital. Now, NHS England has published results with improvements on many metrics that Palantir has touched on. Now, they don't say specifically how much Palantir did. This is for their official kind of results. We don't know the full extent on the trial's effects, but nonetheless, they overlap greatly with previous results that they did attribute specifically to Palantir. And that was attributed a few months before, maybe a couple months. So it's possible that Palantir did a lot more after those official results. And this is only as Palantir has been really working with the use cases since late 2022. So for healthcare-wise, and anyone who works in it like myself, these metrics are actually improving pretty fast. Hospitals are very slow to adopt new workflows, and I can see why, because of the risks to patients. Now, honestly, this is all really good news officially, because the only real news is that Palantir gets a contract to transition, and this is for 1 year for £24.9 million. The rest are just opinions of the journal creating a narrative that there is huge opposition to Palantir. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just saying if it does exist, their rivals are mad, or even they made great efforts to compete, then they actually should have done more, at least officially, to go for the contract. And then taking quotes from several doctors when there are thousands of doctors across the NHS trying to portray them as fully against Palantir doesn't seem very fair considering there are thousands across the whole system. But who knows? I'm just an American. This is outside of my country. Now, maybe the bad thing here is that since this is a transition contract to the FDP, nothing is official still for that larger £480 million contract. And maybe there actually is some opposition legally to award it, because I would assume the implementation or transition of Palantir would be included in the larger contract. So I'm just speculating here, if I had to find something bad, that maybe it's a way for the NHS England Trust specifically to get around the rules to use Palantir themselves, only in case other trusts don't want to sign on for the FDP platform across the board, and this huge contract gets scrapped or reorganized again. Who knows? So that's a possibility here and why they wanted to or had to do this smaller contract. But I want to know what your thoughts on all this, or if you have actually additional information. It's kind of sparse here. Do you think this makes it easier for Palantir to win the NHS FDP contract for £480 million, or if it doesn't? Let me know below, and I'll see you in the next video.